I let her use my printer when her daughter had a school project due. A week later, she was back unplugging it without asking, telling me, "It's not like you need it every day." When I asked her to stop, she said, "Some people don't know how to share." So I shared something too, with her daughter's teacher. I've always been the type who keeps to myself. I work from home, live alone, pay my bills on time, mow my lawn every other Saturday. Nothing flashy, just normal. So when Amanda moved in next door, I didn't expect anything dramatic. She seemed nice enough, single mom, always in a rush, always carrying something, always talking. Her daughter, Ally, seemed polite, quiet, maybe a little shy. The first time Amanda came over was about 2 months after she moved in. She had a tin of cookies and told me they were from a mix, not scratch, and that she wasn't pretending to be Martha Stewart. I laughed. She talked fast and moved faster. I remember thinking, she's got a lot going on. We had a decent neighbor relationship. Nothing deep, just waves and short chats in the driveway. That was fine by me. Then one Tuesday evening, she knocked on my door. It was dark outside, around 8:30. She looked flustered, holding a USB drive in one hand and her phone in the other. She said Ally had a school project due the next morning, and their printer had run out of ink. She asked if I could print it. I said yes. No big deal. She came in, sat at the table, and scrolled through her phone while I opened the document. It was about climate change, nothing fancy. Just some bullet points, a few charts, a bibliography. I printed it, stapled it, and handed it to her. She thanked me and left. Easy. Then exactly 1 week later, I got home from a run and noticed my printer was gone. Gone. At first, I thought maybe I moved it. Maybe I unplugged it for something. But no, cords were on the floor, desk drawer half open. The USB cable was still dangling. I checked the house. Then I looked out the window. And there she was. Amanda. Walking across her yard. With my printer. I opened my front door and said, "Hey, is that my printer?" She turned around like I was the crazy one. "Yeah. Ally had another thing due." I figured it was fine. "You're not using it, right?" She didn't even stop walking. I didn't say much. I was too stunned. I just watched her go into her house with my printer, like she'd borrowed a cup of sugar. She brought it back the next day, no apology, just dropped it on my porch. I told myself, let it go. But the next time it was worse. I was outside trimming the hedges on a Saturday afternoon. Came back inside, sweating, ready for a shower, and there she was. In my office. Unplugging the printer again. I said, "Amanda, what the hell?" She jumped a little, then laughed. "Oh, I thought you wouldn't mind." Ally's on a deadline. I said, "You can't just come into my house and take stuff." She gave me this look. This smug, amused little smile. "Wow," she said. "Some people really don't know how to share." Then she walked out. Like I was the one being rude. That's when it clicked. She thought I was passive. That I wouldn't do anything. That she could just treat my home like a supply closet. So, I decided to share something too. I knew she'd come back. And she did, 4 days later. But this time I was ready. I told her I could print for her, no problem. I smiled. Said she could drop off the file anytime. She looked surprised, then pleased. Dropped off a flash drive that evening. What she didn't know was that I'd made a copy of her daughter's project. Then I added a few pages of my own. Not obvious ones. Just a few inserts, quotes, charts, and a bibliography that looked fine on the surface. But the quotes were fake. The authors were made up. The sources were from non-existent books and websites. It all looked polished, but it was completely fabricated. I slid those pages in and printed the whole thing on nice paper. Stapled it. Left it on my porch just like she used to with my printer. 3 days later, I heard yelling from her house. Slamming doors. Then silence. She showed up at my door that night, furious. Said the school had called her. Said Ally's teacher had flagged the report as dishonest. The project had fake sources. Amanda swore she didn't know anything about it. That she just printed what was on the file. I shrugged. I guess some people don't know how to check what their kid turns in. She didn't say anything, just stared. Then she walked away. She never borrowed anything again. At first, I thought that would be the end of it. But Amanda wasn't done. A few days after our last conversation, I noticed something strange. My recycling bin had been dumped. Just mine. Papers scattered across the driveway. At first I thought it was a raccoon or wind, but it happened again. 3 times in 1 week. Then my internet started acting weird. Slower, dropping out. I checked the router. Nothing seemed wrong. When I called the provider, they said the connection had been interrupted from the outside. Someone had messed with the line. That's when I realized she was trying to get back at me. I didn't confront her. I didn't want a scene. But I did start watching. Not obsessively, just paying attention. She had people over a lot. Not friends, guys. Different ones. Mostly during the day. One of them parked halfway across my yard one morning. When I knocked on her door to say something, she rolled her eyes and said, "It's just for a minute. Don't be so uptight." And then came the real twist. One afternoon, Ally came to my door. Alone. Her voice was quiet. "Did you do something to my project?" she asked. I didn't know what to say. I hesitated. She looked down and said, "It's okay. I didn't think I'd get in trouble for something I didn't even write. My mom said you were being a jerk, but I don't think you are." It hit me in the stomach. This wasn't about Amanda anymore. Ally was stuck in the middle. I'd used her project to get revenge, but she was the one paying the price. A kid. I told her I was sorry, that I thought her mom had checked the file. She just nodded and said, "She never checks. She just tells me what to do." Then she walked away. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the way she said that. Like she'd already learned to expect adults to mess things up for her. The next morning, I printed out a real project. Fixed the sources. Cited everything right. Put it in a folder and dropped it off at the school office with a note. "Please consider this updated submission for Ally, last name." There was a mix-up with the original file. I didn't sign my name. But later that week, Ally waved at me from their porch. Amanda didn't. But I didn't care. I thought that would be it. But then 2 weeks later, I got a knock at the door, this time from someone in uniform. A social worker. The woman was polite. Mid-40s, clipboard in hand, neutral smile. "Hi, I'm with Child and Family Services," she said. "Do you have a moment to speak privately?" My stomach dropped. She explained that they'd received a report. That someone in the neighborhood had mentioned concerns about inappropriate behavior toward a minor. She didn't say who reported it, but she didn't have to. I knew. Amanda. I let her in. My hands were shaking a little, but I kept my voice calm. I showed her the space. Told her the truth. I barely knew Ally. That the only contact we had was her asking about her project. I didn't lie. I didn't need to. The social worker asked polite but pointed questions. Had I ever been alone with Ally? Had I ever given her gifts? Invited her in? I answered everything directly. No, no, no. She looked around the house. Took notes. Checked for anything concerning. Found nothing. "I'll be honest," she said quietly as she stood at the door, ready to leave. "Sometimes people use our department to retaliate in disputes. We still have to follow up." I nodded, throat tight. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Amanda hadn't just tried to embarrass me or mess with my stuff. She tried to paint me as a danger. Someone who hurts kids. That crosses a line you don't come back from. And worse, she used Ally. Again. I thought about calling the police. Reporting her for trespassing, for tampering with my internet line, for making a false report. But I knew she'd deny everything. It would be my word against hers. So, I took a different route. I started documenting everything. I set up a camera by the front window, logged every time she came near my property, kept screenshots of text messages and call records. Even kept copies of neighborhood emails where she'd made passive-aggressive comments about me in vague terms, things like, "Some people in this neighborhood don't belong here." And then one morning, Ally knocked on my door again. She looked scared. "She said I can't talk to you anymore," she whispered. "She said you're dangerous." I crouched down to her level. I didn't touch her. I just looked her in the eye and said, I'm not. But you should always be careful. With everyone. Even grown-ups. She nodded.
Quiet. Sut.
That afternoon, I made a call. Not to the school. Not to Amanda. To her landlord. Her landlord's name was Greg. I found it on the property records site for Snohomish County. It took 5 minutes. When I called, I introduced myself and said I lived next door. Told him there was a situation developing with one of his tenants that I thought he should be aware of. I didn't exaggerate anything. Just laid it all out, calmly, factually. I told him she'd entered my home without permission on multiple occasions. That she'd removed property without asking. That she'd made a false report that brought a social worker to my door. I mentioned the noise, the cars, the dropped trash, and the behavior toward her daughter that didn't seem quite right. He was quiet the whole time. Then he sighed. You're not the first neighbor to call about her, he said. He thanked me for the information and hung up. I don't know what happened next, but a week later, a for rent sign went up at the edge of her yard. That's when things got really ugly. Amanda lost it. Loud yelling at night. Slamming doors. Her car blocking my driveway. Once, she threw a garbage bag into my yard. Another time, I caught her standing on her porch at 2 a.m. staring at my house. She knew it was over. And she blamed me. A few days later, I heard her screaming on the phone. This is harassment. You think you can kick us out? We haven't even done anything. Then silence. Then a crash. The next morning, there was broken glass on my porch. A smashed mug, hers. I recognized it. One of those novelty ones that said, World's Best Mom in tacky gold letters. That same day, Ally came home from school and found her mother crying in the kitchen. Loud enough for me to hear, through the open window. You're all I've got left, Amanda sobbed. And he wants to ruin everything. I looked out and saw Ally standing there, frozen in the doorway. She didn't say anything. She didn't comfort her. She didn't move. Just stood there, looking at her like she didn't recognize the person in front of her anymore. That was the moment I realized the real damage wasn't between Amanda and me. It was between her and her daughter. And I had a front row seat to watch it fall apart. 2 days before the moving truck showed up, Amanda came to my door one last time. No yelling this time.
No smile.
Just stood there with that same mugless coffee hand and an exhausted look in her eyes. You really think you won? She asked. I didn't answer. She laughed, but there was no joy in it. You think you're the good guy in all this? You think calling landlords and planting stuff in school projects makes you better than me? I opened my mouth, then stopped. Because no, I didn't think that. I just thought I wanted her gone. She didn't wait for a reply. Just muttered, enjoy your quiet little life, and walked off. I watched her pack the car that night. She had Ally do most of the lifting. No hugs. No comfort. Just orders barked through the open trunk. I wasn't proud of what I'd done. But I didn't regret it either. Amanda never treated people like people. She took what she wanted, smiled while doing it, and blamed everyone else when it caught up to her. But Ally, that's who I kept thinking about. The day after they left, I got a letter. Folded inside a school notebook paper. No envelope. It just said, thank you for helping me fix the project. I'm sorry my mom was mean to you. I know you were trying to help. I'm gonna be okay. Ally. And that's when the guilt finally caught up to me. Not for Amanda, but because I realized I had fought back so hard against her mother, I forgot that Ally wasn't part of the war. I still have that note. I keep it in the drawer where the printer used to sit. And every time I see it, I wonder if maybe I could have done one thing differently, just one thing, and she wouldn't have had to write it at all.